The rain beat against the tall glass windows of Michael Harrington's penthouse, each droplet sliding down like a secret too heavy to hold. He sat in silence, staring at the glittering New York skyline that stretched beyond his terrace, but there was no spark in his eyes tonight. On paper, he had everything a man could want, wealth that could buy cities, a business empire admired by the world, and a girlfriend who seemed perfect. But beneath the tailored suits and glossy headlines lay a heart that doubted. Michael wasn't searching for love, at least in appearance, had already found him. Vanessa, the woman the world believed was his future wife, was radiant, beautiful, and always by his side at charity galas and private dinners. Yet, deep inside, Michael felt uneasy. Something about her affection seemed conditional, more attached to the empire he commanded than the man he truly was. He longed for someone who would love him not for the millions in his account, but for the beating heart beneath his expensive suit. And so, one night, in a moment of restless courage, Michael devised a test, a dangerous one, reckless even. He would pretend to be paralyzed. A sudden accident, a tragic fall, an announcement that the powerful Harrington would never walk again. Would Vanessa stay, proving her love was true? Or would she vanish when the riches no longer sparkled? It was a gamble with his own heart as the stake. The plan began 2 weeks later. A staged report of an accident circulated among his closest circle. Michael had fallen from a horse during a private trip to the countryside. Rumors spread like wildfire. Soon, the world knew, Michael Harrington was alive, but bound to a wheelchair, perhaps forever. When Vanessa rushed into the hospital room, her perfume entered before she did. She kissed his forehead gently, whispered words of reassurance, but Michael felt the hollowness in her voice. The sweetness was laced with something colder, fear, calculation, hesitation. Days turned into weeks. Vanessa visited, but less and less. Excuses piled up, meetings, events, friends to see. Michael observed quietly, his doubts hardening into truth. And in the midst of this, someone else entered his life, a quiet soul whose presence he had barely noticed before. Her name was Isabella. She was one of the maids who worked at his estate, often in the background, unseen, like the wallpaper of his luxurious world. She never sought attention, never dressed to impress, never flattered. She simply worked, with care, with dignity, with kindness. When Michael returned home from the hospital, confined to his chair, it was Isabella who helped him the most. She didn't just place meals before him, she asked if he liked the seasoning. She didn't just clean his room. She noticed the way his blanket slipped and gently tucked it back in. Small gestures, yet they carried the warmth he had long hungered for. At first, Michael resisted her kindness. He was a man who prided himself on independence, and pretending to be helpless felt like a prison. But Isabella never treated him like a burden. She treated him like a man, still whole, still capable, still human. She would chat with him about little things, her mother's garden back home, her younger brother who wanted to be a musician, the way the city smelled like hope after rain. It was in those small conversations that Michael felt alive again. Unlike Vanessa, Isabella never looked at him with pity, or calculation. She looked at him with genuine care, as though his worth had nothing to do with what he could give, but who he was. Weeks turned into months. Vanessa eventually stopped coming. One evening, she broke the silence over the phone. Her voice was sharp, rehearsed. "Michael, I can't live like this. You understand, don't you? You need someone who can take care of you in ways I can't. It's better if we move on." The call ended. Michael sat in the dim glow of his study, the weight of her words pressing down on him. Yet strangely, he didn't feel broken. In the silence that followed, he realized something profound. Vanessa had failed his test, yes, but in the process, life had gifted him someone far more precious. Isabella. The realization shook him. She had never tried to impress, never expected more than what she gave freely, kindness. One evening, after she had served his dinner, Michael looked at her and asked softly, why do you care so much? I'm just, your employer. Isabella hesitated, her hands clasped nervously. Because you're human. Because everyone deserves dignity, no matter what they've lost. And because I've seen loneliness in your eyes, and I know what that feels like. Her words pierced through him like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. For the first time in years, Michael felt seen, not as a millionaire, not as a patient, but as a man. And so, the mask of his deception grew heavy. He had staged this paralysis, yet now he was trapped in it, torn between guilt and gratitude. How could he confess the truth to Isabella without losing her trust? Would she think him cruel for playing with his own vulnerability? The moment of reckoning came unexpectedly. One morning, Isabella entered his study with a tray of tea, and there she found him, standing. He hadn't meant for her to see, but the guilt had become unbearable. Her eyes widened, the tray trembling in her hands. You can walk. Michael's heart pounded. He stepped forward, shame washing over him. Isabella, wait, please let me explain. Her face was pale, her kindness now shadowed by confusion and hurt. All this time. You lied to me. Why? He swallowed hard, words clawing their way out. Because I needed to know. I needed to know if I was loved for me. Or for what I have. I thought I was testing Vanessa, but instead. I found you. And I can't bear the thought of losing what we've built. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the ticking of the clock. Isabella set the tray down, her hands trembling. Do you know how cruel that is? To make people pity you, to use pain as a game. Michael bowed his head. You're right. I was selfish. But Isabella, every moment with you was real. The kindness you gave me wasn't because of my wealth, or power, or strength. It was because of who you are. And I've fallen in love with that, fallen in love with you. Tears glistened in Isabella's eyes, and she turned away, her heart torn. She wanted to walk out, to leave him drowning in his own schemes. But something held her still, the sincerity in his voice, the rawness of his confession. She had seen glimpses of his soul, fragile and yearning, beneath all the walls he had built. It wasn't an easy forgiveness. Days passed in strained silence. Michael gave her space, uncertain if she would ever come back to him, not as a maid, but as the woman who had unknowingly healed his heart. Then, one evening, she entered his study again. I thought about leaving, Isabella said softly. But then I remembered something my mother once told me. People make mistakes, sometimes terrible ones. But what matters is if they learn, if they change, if they let love turn them into better people. She paused, her eyes searching his. Michael, if you truly mean what you said, then show me. Not with money. Not with gifts. Show me with your actions. Show me you can be a man worthy of the love you seek. Michael's heart swelled. For once, he didn't respond with grand promises. He simply nodded, tears in his eyes. And from that day, he did just that. He began to walk, not only on his feet, but toward humility. He helped fund Isabella's brother's education without her asking. He spent time at shelters and hospitals, not as a donor with cameras flashing, but as a volunteer who listened to stories. He treated Isabella not as someone in his service, but as an equal, someone whose presence enriched his life in ways money never could. Months later, in the garden of his estate, surrounded by roses Isabella had planted herself, Michael knelt, not as a millionaire making a show, but as a man stripped of pride, asking simply, will you share this life with me? Not as a maid. Not as a test. But as the woman who showed me what love truly means. Tears streamed down Isabella's cheeks as she whispered, yes. The world later marveled at the unexpected union, a millionaire and his maid. But to Michael and Isabella, it wasn't a scandal or a fairy tale. It was the truth. Love had found them in the most unlikely way, born not of perfection, but of kindness, forgiveness, and the courage to see beyond wealth and status. And as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting golden light across their joined hands, Michael finally understood the lesson life had tried to teach him all along: love is never about what you have. It's about who you are when everything else is stripped away.